Because it's such a long and formative single narrative, Bible academics call this morning the Joseph cycle. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. You can see on the screen, by the way, when you get lost on the names of the brothers, some help as we go left to right, age older to younger, where Joseph and Benjamin share a mother that the others do not. His father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his children because he was the son of his old age. And he made him an ornamented robe, maybe multicolor, maybe sleeved. We're not sure what that language means. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his other brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, listen to this dream that I have dreamed. There we were binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us? So they hated him even more because of the dream and his words. He had another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, look, I've had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, What kind of dream is this that you have had? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow to the ground before you? So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now his brothers went to pasture his father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. He answered, here I am. And so he said to him, go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring word back to me. So Jacob sent him. His brothers saw Joseph from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these pits. Then we shall say a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, let's not take his life. Reuben said to them, shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him, that he might rescue him out of his brother's hands, and then restore him later to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornamented robe, and took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. When some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him up out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. He returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone, and where can I turn? Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They had the ornamental robe taken to their father and said, this we have found. See now whether or not it's your son's robe. Jacob recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and his daughters sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol, that's the land of the dead, to my son in mourning. Thus his father bewailed him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Skipping chapter 38. Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of the Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. He was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. Now, Joseph was handsome and good looking. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to the master's wife, "Look, with me here, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my hand. He is not greater than me in this house, and nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not consent to lie with her or to be with her. One day, however, when he went into the house to do his work, and while no one else was in the house, she caught hold of his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called out to the members of her household and said, "See, my husband has brought among us a Hebrew to insult us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And when he heard me raise my voice and cry out, he ran and left his garment with me, fleeing outside." Then she kept his garment by her side until his master came home, and she told him the same story. The master became enraged, and Joseph's master took him, put him in the prison where the king's prisoners were imprisoned. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. And after 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed. He was standing by the Nile, and there came up out of the Nile 7 sleek and fat cows, and they grazed in the reed grass. Then 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. The ugly and thin cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows, and Pharaoh awoke. Then he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. Then 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Pharaoh awoke, and it was a dream. In the morning, his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "I remember my faults today. Once Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own meaning. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard, and when we told him, he interpreted our dreams for us, giving an interpretation to each according to their dream. As he interpreted it, so it turned out. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged." So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was hurriedly brought out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that you can hear a dream and interpret it." Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It's not I. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Then Pharaoh told Joseph about the dreams of the 7 cows, fat and lean, and of the 7 ears of corn. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that come up after them are 7 years, as are the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout the land of Egypt. After them, there will arise 7 years of famine to consume the land. The plenty will no longer be known in the land because of the famine that follows, for it will be very grievous." And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. "Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a man who is discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plenteous years. Let them gather all the food for these good years that are coming up, and lay up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. The food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to befall the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine." Well, this proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find anyone else like this, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you these things, and since there's no one as discerning as you shall reign over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand. He arrayed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. Thus Joseph gained authority over the whole land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plenteous years, the earth produced abundantly. He gathered up all the food for those 7 years, and there was plenty in the land of Egypt, stored up food in the cities. He stored up in every city the food of the fields around it. So Joseph stored up grain in such abundance, like the sand of the sea, that he stopped measuring it. It was beyond measure. The 7 years of plenty that prevailed on the land of Egypt came to an end. The 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in every country. But throughout the land of Egypt, there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph. What he says to you to do, do." And since the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph then opened up the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Meanwhile, all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine became severe throughout the world. When Jacob learned that there was grain down in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another? I've heard," he said, "that there is grain down in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might befall him. Thus the sons of Israel were among the people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached all the way up to the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? They said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them, and he said, "You're spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "No, my lord. Your servants have come to buy food. We're all sons of one man. We're honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "You've come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man up in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with their father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It's just as I have said to you, you're spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless that youngest brother comes here too. Let one of you go and bring your brother while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is any truth in you, or else as Pharaoh lives, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "All right, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here while you're imprisoned. The rest of you shall go up and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother back down to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, "Alas, we're paying the penalty for what we did to our other brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. This is why this anguish has come upon us." Then Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them, and he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey, and this was done for them. They loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. When one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at a lodging place, he saw his money at the top of his sack and said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in the top of my sack." And they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob, back up in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us, charged us with spying in the land. But we said to him, 'We're honest men. We're not spies. We are 12 brothers. One of our sons of our father, one is no more, and the youngest is now with our father up in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, 'By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me. Take grain for the famine of your household and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, and I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will release this other brother to you, and you can go ahead and trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his bag of money. When they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. And their father Jacob said to them, 'I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin? All this has happened to me.' Then Reuben said to his father, You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." But he said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should come to him on the journey that you're about to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol." Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten up the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go again, buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" Jacob said, "Why did you treat me so badly as to even tell the man you had another brother?" They replied, "The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' What we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way have known he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Then Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the boy with me, and let us be on our way so that we may live and not die, you and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. You can hold me accountable for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever." If we had not delayed, we could have returned twice by now. Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry them down as a present to the man. A little balm and a little honey, gum, resin, pistachio nuts, almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the top of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. And take your brother also, and be on your way again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he may send back your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, if I'm bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." So the men took the present, and they took double the money with them, as well as Benjamin. Then they went on their way down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of the house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph said and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, "It's because of the money replaced in our sacks the first time that we've been brought in, so that he may have the opportunity to fall upon us and make slaves of all of us and take our donkeys." So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the entrance. They said, "Oh, my lord, we came down the first time to buy food, and when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each one's money on the top of his sack, our money in full weight, so we brought it back with us. Moreover, we have brought down with us additional money to buy more food. We do not know who put the money in our sacks." The steward replied, "Rest assured, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. When the steward had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when they'd given their donkeys fodder, they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they would dine there. When Joseph came home, they brought him the present they had carried into the house and bowed down to the ground before him. He inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He's still alive." And they bowed their heads and did obeisance. Then he looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and he said, Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." And with that, Joseph hurried out because he was overcome with affection for his brother, and he was about to weep. So he went into a private room and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out. Controlling himself, he said, "Serve the meal." When they were seated before him, the firstborn, according to his birthright, and the youngest, according to his youth, the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. Then Joseph commanded the steward of the house, "Fill the men's sack with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's money on top of his sack. Put my cup, the silver cup, in the top of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain." And the steward did as Joseph commanded. As soon as the morning was light and the men were sent away with their donkeys and supplies, when they had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his steward, "Go, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say, 'Why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks? Does not indeed he use it for divination? You've done wrong in doing this.' When the steward overtook them, he repeated these words to them. They said to him, 'Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants that they should do such a thing. Look, the money that we found at the top of our sacks, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. Why then would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Should it be found with any one of your servants, let him die. Moreover, the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves.' Steward said, 'Even so, in accordance with your words, let it be. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, but the rest of you shall go free.' Then each one lowered his sack to the ground, and each one opened his sack. He searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this they tore their clothes. Then each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house while he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Joseph said, 'What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that one such as I can practice divination?' And Judah said, 'What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Here we are then, my Lord's slave, both we and also the one in whose possession the cup has been found.' But Joseph said, 'Far be it that I should do so. Only the one in whose possession the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for the rest of you, go up in peace to your father.' Then Judah stepped up and said, 'Oh, my Lord, let your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ears. Do not be angry with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a young brother, a child of his old age. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, so that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother goes with us will we go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I've never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in sorrow to Sheol. Now therefore, Lord, when I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant my father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became surety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. Now therefore, please, if your servant can remain as a slave from my Lord in place of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the suffering that would come upon my father. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him. And he cried out, send everyone away. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made known himself to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, so dismayed were they at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come closer to me. Come closer. And they came closer. He said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me here to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which it'll be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me here before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me, but God. He has made me father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, all that you have. I will provide for you there, since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And now your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my own mouth that speaks to you. And then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. Joseph gave them wagons according to the instruction of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. To each one he gave a set of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of garments. To his father he sent the following: 10 donkeys loaded with good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provisions for the grain on the journey. Then he sent his brothers along the way, and as they were leaving, he said, hey, do not quarrel along the way. So they went out of Egypt, came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, and they told him, Joseph is still alive. He's even ruler over all the land of Egypt. Jacob was stunned. He could not believe them. But when they told him the words of Joseph that he had said, when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent, the spirit of Father Jacob revived. And he said, enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before I die. When Israel set out on his journey with all that he had, he came to Beersheba. He offered sacrifices to God, and the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night. He said, Jacob, Jacob. He said, here I am. And he said, I am God, the God of your fathers and mothers. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. And Joseph's own hand shall close your eyes. Then Jacob sent out from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives, and the wagons that Pharaoh had sent. They took their livestock and the goods that they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they came down into Egypt. Jacob and all his offspring with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, all his offspring he brought with him down into Egypt. That's how he got.